Hi everybody and welcome to Different Leaf, a show for new and experienced cannabis consumers. I'm Brit Smith. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of big-time cannabis brands that have popped up over the last decade. But when was the last time that you heard or saw an advert or commercial for a major cannabis brand? You may have seen a billboard for a local dispensary, or maybe you've seen some social media reels. You might even flip through your latest issue of Different Leaf the magazine and see our ads in there. But otherwise, there's almost no way for cannabis companies to reach their audience and for new or curious consumers to learn the truth about trying weed. On the flip side, the government has been taking part in anti-cannabis campaigns for decades. It started in the early 1930s when then Commissioner of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, Harry Anslinger, led the first iteration of the war on drugs, which caused the initial wave of Reefer Madness fears around cannabis. Many people, especially our elders, still believe that propaganda from Harry Anslinger, that cannabis makes you lazy, and that if you enjoy getting high, deep down you're just an immoral dirtbag. And that's being perpetuated by the fact that the law won't let cannabis companies correct those beliefs. Advertising and marketing on streaming services, TV, radio, even in shop windows is largely banned across the US. The only way the public can learn new things about cannabis is through social media if it doesn't get shut down, maybe a billboard or two, in print, and through word of mouth. Besides lobbying for policy changes, which often take several years to come to fruition, what can the cannabis industry do to help lift the stigma, open the conversation with canna-curious consumers, foster an economic climate in which companies can truly thrive, and end the moratorium on cannabis advertising? That's where today's guest comes in. Amy Deneson is co-founder of the Cannabis Media Council, the first group of cannabis professionals working to put out nationwide media campaigns that push back on the misperceptions about the cannabis plant, products, and its consumers. The consumer-facing think tank says that it's built for a new generation of legal cannabis entrepreneurs who are aiming to deprogram the war on plants by putting out compelling, wholehearted, people-centered campaigns that promote positive experiences with cannabis and normalize consumption across generations. The Cannabis Media Council's inaugural campaign is called I'm High Right Now, and it features cannabis consumers aged mostly over 60, humorously enjoying pot in the garden, on the golf course, and even in the bedroom. You may have also seen one of the Cannabis Media Council's print ads gracing the inside cover of the latest Variety magazine across certain parts of the US. Or perhaps you've spotted their ad featuring a youthful retiree who discusses her use of cannabis to help her aches and pains from gardening, despite what her ex-husband always thought about weed, in the back of the latest issue of Different Leaf the magazine. Today we're going to chat with Amy Deneson about the need for a nationwide destigmatization campaign, how their campaign is sparking meaningful conversations with our elders on consuming cannabis and the role of joy in our lives, how the council came up with the language and images that we're seeing in their ads across the country, why the council connected with one of the nation's largest media empires, Hearst Media, and Amy and I eventually fully take part in the I'm High Right Now campaign by getting high together and discussing how very normal it has become. Feel free to join in with us. And we'll be right back with Amy Deneson from the Cannabis Media Council. It's so nice to meet you. Thank you so much for being here. Today we're going to be talking about destigmatizing cannabis and how advertising is doing that. So let's kick it off by talking about the Cannabis Media Council. What is it? Who forms it? And what do you guys do?
Thank you, Britt, and thank you for the warm welcome to uplift the Cannabis Media Council. The council is the first trade organization of its kind, which strives to deprogram the war on plants and people. And we strive to do this through national advertising campaigns, similar to category level campaigns that we see in other industry or agricultural industries, like the Got Milk campaign for the dairy industry or Beef, It's What's for Dinner. We're striving to put out national advertising campaigns that are pro-cannabis consumption, and in doing this, deprogram and destigmatize cannabis consumption but also simultaneously end the mainstream media moratorium on cannabis advertising. So it's a two-part mission of put out great creative consumer-focused advertising, but also do this on the mainstream channels that the majority of Americans are already referencing, trusting, and looking to for guidance.
So this is a really interesting group of folks who are tackling something, I think, that's for the greater good of the cannabis culture and also for the greater good of the cannabis industry, because like you mentioned, advertising and marketing in cannabis is near impossible without getting shut down on social media. There's bans on TV and radio. There's certain allowances for billboards, but otherwise, cannabis companies have real trouble with advertising and marketing. That slice is really missing. We're going to get into the stigma stuff a little bit later and how you guys are coming up with these campaigns to change the narrative on cannabis. But first of all, I want to talk a little bit about that advertising arm of it. Why is this missing? Why are cannabis companies having so much trouble with advertising themselves, especially things like hemp and CBD, which are legal across all 50 states?
Yes, it's a really important part of the marketing mix. We see this from the retail industry that the cannabis industry is very quickly evolving into. And we see that the advertising or the paid media or the paid marketing component of the marketing mix, which also includes earned media or earned marketing, which we think about as press and PR or influencer marketing, and then also our own channels, our own media or marketing endeavors, which of course are our websites, our own handles, our email, our text messaging. I mean, all parts of the marketing mix are constrained in cannabis, but notably advertising is, and which is why the Cannabis Media Council took it on and looks to go to market at scale with advertising. So that's the number one reason why advertisers invest in advertising or in the paid media channels, is because they're looking to reach very specific audiences at scale. And so when we think about solving for that for the cannabis advertisers, the Cannabis Media Council came together with this idea of how can we collectively be the tide that lifts all boats for the industry. And so my co-founder, Joyce Sonali, is looking at this from an investor point of view, from where she sits with Big Rock Capital in the San Francisco Bay Area and has seeded many of the early California enterprises, that each individual brand would continually come back and raise in order to destigmatize and educate their entire market, right? And so the question became, one, can we do something nationally to really uplift the category? And then two, how can we make it the most impactful for the industry as a whole? Because what we see as brand advertisers is that there's only so far we can go alone. And certainly there are individual aims and goals for companies as they go to market. But if there is one common goal that everybody operating in the cannabis space shares right now, it's that we must grow the addressable market. We must grow how many people are curious and confident to try regulated cannabis. And advertising is one of the most dynamic things you can do to reach people, and to consistent recency and frequency of messaging drive people towards an action that you're hoping that they'll take. And so in thinking about how do we do this, we not only brought together, an incredible founding leadership board to help drive this effort. That includes not only national campaigns, but also industry guidelines that we'll be releasing every May. We've circled the date of May 23rd because it's Anslinger's birthday. So this is our counter to his legacy of being such a vicious war leader on not only the plant, but the people. And so in thinking about how we issue guidelines similar to the IAB, when you have new industries that are self-regulating until there's, national standards, which would obviously come with legalization, is that we're stepping in as the group to say, we're going to set good practices and highlight case studies of people who are doing it well as advertisers and then also publishers. So we can continue to inspire people to consider this category and in this way.
And really what you guys are doing is putting out really, I'd say, provocative campaigns, sort of playful campaigns that address the stigma that came from the last campaign on drugs, which was the war on drugs. And as you mentioned, Harry Anslinger was really at the forefront back in the 30s of the war on drugs. It was like the original, like, Reefer Madness pusher. But Harry Anslinger was one of the first and most prominent anti-cannabis advocates. Now you're coming back with a campaign almost 100 years later to sort of counteract all of that propaganda that came out. And of course, the folks that were most hit by that propaganda are my parents' generation, the baby boomers, those that were born, after World War II, and now are our elders, and they are fighting this sort of battle inside their minds about what they think cannabis is and now what they're seeing cannabis can do. So let's talk about the campaign I'm High Right Now from the Cannabis Media Council. What was the goal of this campaign, and can you sort of explain what it's doing for the audience?
Excellent. Thank you, Brit. You've teed it up so perfectly, because that history is exactly why and exactly the true north of the Cannabis Media Council's inaugural campaign, I'm High Right Now. And the intention of this campaign is to connect directly with our elders, to connect with people over the age of 55, just to give it a number, that have been the most stigmatized, the most subjugated to myths around this plant. And so we're like, let's connect with our elders who not only may stand to benefit incredibly by getting to know this plant anew and reintroduce the plant in its many new forms that it's taking, but do so in a playful way. And so we have heard that the campaign I'm High Right Now is called, it's a bit provocative, but we tend to lean into the playful side of things, because in addition to, really being able to spark conversations through laughter, through joy, the I'm High Right Now campaign also serves to open conversations between the generations. And we do see that if our elders, are considering cannabis so that they can play a pain-free round of golf, right? And they can walk instead of take the cart. Or if our gardeners can get back into the garden, and verbatim, she says, "Dirtbag, that's me," right? And reclaim some of the language, but she can get back into the garden and enjoy her life. We have a couple who's being, featured as sliding back into their old ways and really enjoying their sex life in their advanced years. And then also a walker who gets out and gets her steps in, and her sunset strolls have never been brighter. And it's all of that language, is meant to both spotlight our elders enjoying their life, which is very much a part of adult use, that yes, there is a deep medical need, and we need to focus, we need to research, we need to invest in the medical market when the cannabinoid products can become, something of such medical value. But also there's a real consumer base of people who would like to sleep better, who would like to just take a layer of aches and pains off the surface. And so in focusing, our messaging on this type of consumption for consumers, adding a layer of humor, and then also specifically using words that have been leveled against cannabis consumers in order to reclaim the language, to not have people suffering under the names that they've been called, is also part of the campaign. And so our hope is that not only will our elders benefit in legal adult use states of getting to know these plants and the products, but then also when our elders, our aunties, our grandmas consume cannabis, it becomes that much more normal for the entire family. So there's also this, wonderful influence within the family unit that can be, normalizing for everyone.
Yeah, it's such a powerful campaign. As soon as it scrolled across my social media feed a few weeks ago, it caught my eye because it's very bold colors, and it's, somebody who looks like my dad standing there with a golf club. And it says in sort of playful bubble letters above him, "Me, a loafer? You know it." And I was like, what is this? It was really eye-catching, and it got me to read through. It was like a little script that this character would say about, I'm tired after 18 holes, and this really helps me sleep better. And I was like, this old fella reminds me of my dad. So I took a picture of it. I sent it to my dad. And this is what the advertising that you're doing is doing. It sparks those interfamily conversations around using the word loafer, because the stereotype of cannabis consumers back in my dad's day was that they were lazy. And then there's the other images that you described. There's the couple who are getting back into their sex life. And it says at the top of it, darn right, it's a gateway. It's a gateway back into great sex. But again, like you said, it reclaims that language of being a gateway drug. My favorite one was the dirtbag. She's standing there with a little trowel and her gardening hat. And I was like, oh, she looks like my mother. My mother loves to garden, but her knees always ache. In her little script below her, it says, in the divorce, I got the house, but the garden was very difficult for me. So now I tried cannabis against my ex-husband's will. And, so there are different topics that are addressed in these campaigns. Not only do you want to make yourself feel better as a gardener, but historically, maybe you were with somebody who believed all those myths about cannabis, and now that's something that you've got to address. And I love that it's in this sort of lighthearted way where you can really put a voice to these characters and you can connect with them and you can see them as somebody actually in your family. And you can then redirect the conversation about what it means to be high and what it means to use cannabis. So in the vein of I'm high right now, and it's actually not that bad for you, I thought for the first time ever in our 100-something episodes of Different Leaf, I would get high for the rest of the episode. All right, Amy, so I've got...
Yes! I support this.
I've got a loaded bowl, and people might think that I'm high for some of the other episodes. I've not been high before. I don't smoke before I interview people. It really makes me feel a little too laid back and sleepy. So I've never done it before. But we're going to see what it's like, and we're going to see that it's not that bad to be high. It doesn't make you crazy. It doesn't make you sleepy. Well, we'll see about the sleepy. It doesn't make you lazy. That's one of the worst myths, I think, that's out there, that it makes you lazy. If you want to relax, it helps you relax. But all right, so enough talking it up. I'm going to hit this bong, and we're going to see how it do. Okay, so this is, just to plug them, it's Sour Diesel by the Green Gold Group. It's a beautiful, smelly, it smells like citrus. Yes, let's do it. You can hear I need to clean my pipe out. All right, so the rest of this episode, I'm high right now.
I would love to join you.
Please, do you have something handy?
I would love to join you. I have a wonderful flower that is a 1-to-1 cultivar. I really believe in a 1 CBD to THC balance, especially in flower. It's a lovely daytime connection that can keep you focused, because exactly to your point, it's a huge myth that you're immediately lazy. I mean, of course, depending on dosage and depending on form and all that good stuff. But I do love a nice balanced flower. And also a very elevating experience, if I may also do a plug, is a House of Puff smoking accessories. There's something so elevating about either putting a pre-roll into a joint holder that's hand-blown glass, or their La Pipes are gorgeous and handmade by artisans that are every delightful color of pink and daffodil. And so it's really a good time. So I think not only is it important for us to get high with fantastic products, but also to make the ritual surrounding the consumption lovely as well. And so with that, I'm going to find a lighter and join you.
Yes, light it up. I think that those little joint holders, it's like, just a tiny little glass tube. It's very Cruella de Vil, but sort of in the new age. And it makes me feel more elegant when I smoke.
Elegant is the word, right?
I love it. Yes, absolutely. While you're finding, go find your lighter. Yes, please. Ah, that's such a nice way to start my morning. I'm a real wake and baker. And it's a little coffee, a little bong hit, I meditate, and that is the start of my day. And it's a really beautiful way to start my day. And then I'll go for a walk with my dogs in nature, and it's like, just me and nature. It's quite beautiful.
Yes.
Are you a daytime smoker?
I really love an end of day. I love to transition with cannabis and go from being really hypercharged with work and to, starting to kind of think about relaxing. I love to walk and consume. I also will fully admit that I adore CBN for sleeping. And so am every night gummy with CBN consumer. It's the best sleep ever.
Yes, really. I've never tried CBN. I usually take melatonin at night, so I was just like, I've already got something doing its job, but actually I'd prefer something from the cannabis plant, so maybe I'll try some CBN.
Yeah, give it a whirl. Sometimes melatonin can also bring the dreams. And so if
Yeah.
melatonin ever tips out onto, some of the more intense dreams, trying the cannabinoid CBN at around 5 mgs, and also always better if it's in a legal spot to be able to have the THC cannabinoid, with to help activate entourage effect, all that good stuff. But
Yeah.
I do find that CBN gummies are absolutely fantastic for sleep.
Interesting. I'm going to give those a whirl. Yeah, there's so much that's changed over the years about weed. Like it used to be just buy some weed and smoke it, but prohibition is ending slowly but surely, and now we've got all these different ways that we can break up the plant and eat it so that you can have a longer effect, and all these different cannabinoids is like so fascinating to me. And there's so much to educate the consumer on. If you're not really dorky about it, it's quite a lot of information to take on. And you're like at the Cannabis Media Council just using this creative way of addressing this, I guess, generational perceptions of what cannabis is and what it's becoming now, where you can get little pills that are focused on certain feelings. You can get certain ones that will make you feel horny. You can get pills that'll make you feel chill and sleep with CBN. And it's a whole new world of weed. Let me ask you about the campaign I'm High right now. Where did the inspiration come from for all these different characters and the language that they would be using?
It's such a great question. And the inspiration for I'm High right now, it really does bring in, some of the points that you were mentioning, and that one of the biggest objections I hear from, people trying cannabis anew is like, oh, I don't smoke. I'm like, there's
Mm,
so many other ways to consume cannabis, whether exactly as you said, capsules, tinctures, also topicals, which I find so valuable for any type of acute relief. For a long time, I had chronic back pain and would apply a tincture topically to my back in order
mm,
to help be, in an acute way without having to go through my entire system. And so I think that we wanted to not only expand the idea of what it means to be high, because certainly getting elevated with the plant is fantastic and fun, and certainly something to enjoy. But if we think about, a full spectrum high, if you will, it's extremely euphoric to get back to doing things that you love,
yeah.
or to do something that you thought was those days were over for you and that you're back enjoying them. And so the idea of connecting with people to say, I'm high right now because I'm back enjoying my life with products that enabled me to be thrilled, but aren't necessarily smoking only, but could become in another form. And so the I'm high right now characters and the environments that they're in were really inspired by how can we showcase people enjoying their life and then not get too heavily into the products, but allow from this spark of conversation to come in and see. With the Cannabis Media Council, we have at this point over 200 members who have been verified and welcomed into the council. And the membership is free with high values, because we also believe that many of the brands and operators have been doing the most work at this point of destigmatizing, not only of educating the market, but also producing products, which is also its own level of commitment and tenacity. And so that people start to see all of the varieties of products that are available to them. And so,
Yeah.
that is the hope, is that as we welcome in, at this point, the campaign's been live a couple of months, and we've had around 2 million impressions on the campaign.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And so impressions meaning eyeballs of people who have taken
Yeah.
it in one variety or another. And then we've also invited people in to ask additional questions, and then also connect within the Cannabis Media Council collective to start to get to know, either operators in their local environment, or to be inspired to travel to new states, to get to know that if I go hiking in California, that I should try this topical, or I should if I'm in Colorado, I could try this to sleep, when I'm dealing with jet lag. And so I think that there's lots of fun there golf weekends just got way more fun in Palm Springs, quite honestly. But
All
yeah,
right. Did you use data that you've seen, like the older generation tend to use for these reasons that you've included in the campaign, for sex, for activities and exercises, for sleep? Is that what we tend to see them using it most for?
certainly. And so
Yeah.
I think there's also there was data that certainly went into informing most common usage. I mean, we've also taken in anecdotal data of our members, of retailers saying that people come in and they want to try cannabis because they want to get back to their pickleball game, right? And so we've also included some anecdotal data of people that are especially in the retail space of why consumers are asking for certain products. But
Mm.
notably, we also looked at the split between male and female consumers of this age demographic and did see that even in legal markets, they lagged in purchasing products, and especially women lagged in purchasing products. So we also wanted to make a note of putting 3 females forward
Yeah.
in the campaign in order to spotlight that women consume cannabis. They stand to benefit from learning more about these products. And they also tend to be traditionally the caregivers of their family and the people that will
Hmm.
say, you should really try this to their peers and then also to their children. So I think that connecting with women is also something that was really, really important for the Cannabis Media Council and our campaign.
Yeah, there's so many ways that women can use cannabis. We did a whole episode with Dr. Becky Lynn a few months ago. If you're interested, go back and find it. And she discusses things from like using it for stress and sleep to using it during menopause and any time of the month that you need it. There's so many medical ways that we can use cannabis. I think that that's really an important part of pushing this conversation is like, I want to help my parents grow old without the pain. I want to help them figure out, how to live better with it. If they want to use CBD oil, like maybe it can help them sleep better because I know my mom has trouble sleeping because my dad snores his head off as he gets older. So I'm like, Mom, take some CBD oil. It'll help you sleep, like there's a lot of different ways that it can benefit your life and make your life better. Quick question. Are you feeling the flower yet? I'm definitely feeling my flower.
Definitely. I'm feeling my flower, and it's taken a level, off of, it's always a little bit nerve-wracking to do interviews. I enjoy
Yeah.
speaking, and this is the goal, right? Is to amplify and to talk about cannabis. But it's always a little bit of nerves, and I found that for me, the flower has put me at ease, and we're just gonna flow with the conversation. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm high right now, and also feeling really proud to be here. So, kind of
Oh.
take some of the nerves off of it and just enjoy the process of it. How about you? How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm finding that too. I don't get nervous so much as I start to think ahead a lot during the questions. And I think that that's stopped. Like I'm just very much in the moment of the conversation. So yeah, I'm feeling it. It's nice. I also have dry mouth like crazy. I think that's a sign of some good flower though.
Yes.
Right? Isn't that's a part of a good flower is like, oh man, I've got cotton mouth. So, one more thing that you guys were addressing in the campaign, apart from like all of the myths and all of the things that cannabis can be useful for, is the moral depravity and the criminality myths. So, a lot of folks are interested in it medically, but they're still, in the mindset that it makes you a bad person or that it makes you a criminal. And, in some states it isn't yet legal to access all kinds of cannabis. How do you think that we're fighting the stigma through this sort of education conversation about the way people see cannabis consumers as people?
First of all, nobody should be in prison for cannabis. Nobody. So I think
Right.
it's very much worth keeping at the front of so many conversations that we have to get people out of prison and we have to pay reparations for those who have been disproportionately devastated by the war on drugs. And that is notably Black and Brown people and who have been over policed and devastated by these overtly racist policies. And so to speak very plainly about that is really important and is everyone's job in the cannabis space to continue to advocate, support, and see that it's done. And so I want to start there. And nobody should be in prison for cannabis. And we need to get everyone out and we need to pay reparations. And so that's a very foundational, necessary component of us starting to see people who consume cannabis as being normal and not criminal, right? And so I think that that's one major effort that absolutely have to prioritize is number one. Secondly, starting to normalize cannabis consumption, whether it's through looking at our elders who are playing with cannabis or looking at, and really talking about consuming cannabis for joy and also for wellness and also for medical reasons. The more and more that we tell our stories, the more normal it becomes. And the one social movement that I also keep in mind is that I was part of the LGBTQI movement and came out in the early 2000s, but was really a benefactor of, I benefited from this movement and being able to come out as queer. And part of the initiatives that started in the 90s was this one-to-one conversations of, I know somebody who is gay, or I know someone who's a lesbian, or I know someone who's queer. And starting to have that personal, connectivity and points is in that social movement and how much the LGBTQI community has grown into acceptance and also into rights. That I do think that there are similarities between reducing the stigma around cannabis consumption that's notably developed by us telling our individual stories and our personal stories. And so, how cannabis, helps someone's mother, becomes a conversation that allows someone else to feel a little less afraid of trying cannabis or, and thinking about, oh, they aren't going to judge me, right? If I say that I also enjoy it. But I would love to see not only us continue to tell our stories and connect with each other one-to-one so that it's normal and no big deal to consume, but then secondly, to really invite conversations around enjoying our life, because there are certainly things that this plant can help with that are very, very serious. But I think as Americans, we also don't elevate enjoying our life, enjoying our time to be super important and, less of a conversation about productivity. And cannabis helps me do the job better and instead have the conversation about, I enjoyed my life and I woke up the next day and wasn't hungover.
That's a big part of it. I'll tell you, as a European living in America now almost half my life, that's so true. Like, there's not really the focus here that we have back in Europe on, joy and freedom of time and just sort of living your life based on what brings you daily joy. I think that it's more out here like, focused on production. What can I do? What can I bring to the table? It's all that hustle culture. And like, that's really something that cannabis can help with, is bringing you back to that, what really matters in life, and just sort of changing your perception of the world and what you think is important. I think that that's a really important factor of just using cannabis for wellness, in general.
Right.
I think that there's a beautiful connection that we have with this plant right now here in the US, but when it comes to advertising, we aren't being connected with cannabis brands that could be bettering our lives, because there's obviously the law still. Cannabis is illegal. You can't sell anything across state lines if it's in rec states. So there's still a lot of laws in the way of, national scale advertising, but you guys are going for it. Tell me about your connection with Hearst Media, which is a massive media company in the US.
Yes, Hearst is the largest media empire that accepts cannabis advertising. And so in addition to us coming out with a very strong mission and manifesto to deprogram the war on plants and people and to end the mainstream media moratorium on cannabis advertising, we wanted to lead with a partner that had the scale to impress that point. And that certainly is Hearst. And also part of the partnership was ensuring that Hearst was ready to acknowledge their history. And there's public acknowledgement through this partnership that Hearst was wrong and is acknowledging that many of us have been wrong about this plant, and we acknowledge it, but it's also time to get it right and to invest all of the resources that we have into changing this narrative, into getting it right for not only advertisers, but then also the customers and the people that they're serving. And so it was important to us when we partnered with Hearst that this was truly their intention. And we have seen this through not only their partnership with us, but also with the Last Prisoner Project, and also to their internal employees, really taking leadership within their own organization to acknowledge the plant in the lives of their employees. And one of the biggest concerns that people have with investing in advertising or marketing in cannabis is that they won't have a place to run great creative, or they won't have a place to put fantastic content. And so by highlighting that Hearst is welcoming this content, is doing it on an enterprise level, is doing it on a level that puts the cannabis industry in lockstep and with fantastic advertisers, and then Hearst, because of their network, can make sure that they operate very, very locally at scale, is an incredible partnership. And in addition to us being able to get our good word out through the Hearst channels, we launched in Connecticut, notably because we were right on the heels of adult use legalizing. And so we thought that there would be quite a few people considering adult use products and new. And so we launched in Connecticut with the Connecticut Post. But we've also run through the San Francisco markets and also looking at additional markets through their network. And so the goal and the excitement would be to show that cannabis advertisers can advertise. They can do it well with enterprise solutions. And then the wonderful thing that's also part of our partnership with Hearst is that when brands activate advertising with Hearst through coming to learn about it from the Cannabis Media Council or because they're a Cannabis Media Council member, then there's a portion of their media buy that Hearst will match in value add media, meaning that when you buy advertising and run ad campaigns with Hearst, you're also benefiting the Cannabis Media Council and the continuation of our campaign.
Love that. That's such a cool partnership. It's really quite major to see such a big media company accepting cannabis as an industry that it would work with. Hopefully it's setting the tone for bigger change, maybe policy change. I think what you guys are doing is really important. It's really funny. I think the ads are really humorous. I think that they're great conversation starters. And I'm looking forward to future campaigns to change the stigma and the way that we see cannabis as part of our lives. Thank you so much, Amy, for coming on the show today. Thank you for getting high with me. I feel super mellow. Usually at the end, I'm like trying to wrap it up, but I'm feeling very chill right now. So this has been nice. Maybe I'll smoke in the middle of more episodes. My boss is like, no, do not do that.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for chatting with me about the Cannabis Media Council and our campaign I'm High right now. Thank you for getting high with me. And I agree. I think this is early New York City time, but I do think that you've set me in good stead for the rest of the day. So appreciate you.
All right. Yeah, let's have a good rest of our day. A massive thanks to Amy Deneson and the Cannabis Media Council. Be sure to check out their advertising campaign in the back of the latest issue of Different Leaf the magazine, available for purchase at differentleaf.com or on thousands of newsstands in the US and Canada. Find your nearest in-person retailer at differentleaf.com under the Subscribe and Shop tab. Next week, we'll be chatting with cannabis educator and cancer survivor Sarah Pyan.
People who are using it medicinally who have never used it before, or may have had bad experiences, or may be really influenced by stigma, they're not as open to, hey, let's throw this in the air and see what happens. Let's try a bunch of stuff. And so I was really lucky because for me, being somebody who's already curious about cannabis beyond what I'd experienced, I was kind of like a kid in a candy store.
Yeah, I bet.
It was like, well, if I'm going to go through cancer, I may as well have fun doing it.
Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast wherever you're listening right now so you don't miss out on that next episode. And make sure you're following us on social media at Different Leaf, and I'm at Brit the British. Make sure you've got your spring cultural issue of Different Leaf the magazine out now at select retailers and available at differentleaf.com.